The PR staff said that she is not allowed to do this. They would prefer that she did not do this.
Cathy Engelbert just got exposed. Not by a rival, not by a disgruntled player, not by some anonymous league source whispering into a reporter's ear. She got exposed by Dan Patrick, one of the most respected voices in the history of sports media. A man who has interviewed commissioners, presidents, Hall of Famers, and legends across every major sport for over 2 decades. And the way she handled it, the way the WNBA's own commissioner handled a scheduled, promoted, agreed-upon interview, tells you everything, absolutely everything you need to know about why this league is in the catastrophic state it is in right now. This is Rim Run, and today we are ripping the doors off the WNBA front office and exposing the cowardice at the very top of this organization.
But if you tell me you're coming on and you make us wait 2 hours, that's a problem. And that says a lot about what's going on, in my opinion, with the WNBA.
Let me set the stakes for you right now, because I want every single person watching this video to understand exactly what we are dealing with. This is not a story about one missed interview. This is not a story about a scheduling conflict, or a miscommunication, or a busy commissioner who ran out of time. This is a story about deliberate, calculated avoidance. This is a story about a commissioner who has been given every opportunity to stand in front of a microphone and answer for what has been happening to Caitlyn Clark inside her own league. The targeting, the assault, the complete and utter absence of protective leadership from the office that is supposed to set the standard, and who has chosen again and again and again to run from that conversation. The WNBA is at an inflection point. The league has expansion on the table. It has the most talked about rookie in women's basketball history, drawing eyeballs from audiences that have never watched a WNBA game before. It has a Congress situation, members of the United States Congress paying attention to what is happening on those courts. And the commissioner of that league cannot sit down for a tough interview. Cannot, will not. The woman who is supposed to be the face of accountability for this entire organization is hiding behind a PR department while the building burns around her. Sit with that for a second. Really sit with it.
Well, at some point, you have to do this. I mean, if you want to be treated as a serious league, then do these.
Here is exactly what happened. Documented, step by step, because the details matter, and I am not going to let you miss a single one of them. Dan Patrick's producer, a man named Todd, approached Cathy Engelbert at a pairings party. This was a social event, a relaxed setting. Engelbert has been, by all accounts, friendly to the Dan Patrick show in the past. She was friendly at this same event the year before. Todd walked up to her and made a simple, reasonable request. He said they would love to have her on the show. He told her that people have not heard answers from the commissioner. He told her there are a lot of questions out there. And Cathy Engelbert looked him in the eye and said yes. She said yes. That is the starting point of this entire story. The commissioner of the WNBA said yes. So the Dan Patrick show did what any professional media operation does. They scheduled the interview, they promoted it all day, they built it into the show's plans. The interview was structured. Engelbert would finish a hotel room meeting, complete a conference call, and then join the show. That was the plan. That was the agreement. That was what the commissioner of the Women's National Basketball Association committed to. And then she vanished. For 90 minutes, the show's team was standing by, waiting for any update at all, not even a confirmation. Not even a courtesy message, nothing. 90 minutes of silence from the office of the commissioner of a major professional sports league. Dan Patrick described it himself. They waited, and they waited, and they waited. And then, finally, word came through. Not from Engelbert herself. Not from someone in her personal office who picked up a phone and extended the basic professional courtesy of a direct conversation. The word came through the WNBA's PR department, and the message was this: the PR staff said that she is not allowed to do this. They would prefer that she did not do this, not allowed. The commissioner of the league is not allowed to do an interview by her own PR department. I want you to hear Dan Patrick say that himself, because this is not secondhand, this is not paraphrase. Don't take my word for it. Listen to him describe exactly what happened in his own voice.
The PR staff said that she is not allowed to do this. They would prefer that she did not do this.
She is not allowed to do this. They would prefer that she did not do this. The commissioner of the WNBA, blocked by her own communications staff, after agreeing to the interview, after the show promoted it all day, after 90 minutes of dead silence. That is what was said. That is the admission. That is the evidence, and there is absolutely no spin you can put on that sentence. Let me say it back to you one more time so it lands the way it deserves to land. The WNBA's PR department told Dan Patrick's team that the commissioner of the league, the person who runs the entire organization, is not allowed to answer questions. Not allowed. On a show she agreed to appear on, after the show promoted her appearance to their entire audience. That is not a scheduling conflict. That is a cover-up. And the question you have to ask yourself right now is, what is she covering up?
But if you tell me you're coming on and you make us wait 2 hours, that's a problem. And that says a lot about what's going on, in my opinion, with the WNBA.
Here is the first thing that makes this whole situation so absolutely baffling and so undeniably damning. Cathy Engelbert did not disappear into thin air after ducking the Dan Patrick show. She did not go dark. She did not cancel all media appearances and retreat to a bunker somewhere. She went on a radio station in Kansas City the same day, or around the same time. She went on a different show in a different market and did an interview. But here is the ruthless, glaring detail that you absolutely cannot overlook. According to what Dan Patrick was told, she was only going to be asked about expansion on that Kansas City station. They were not going to ask her tough questions. That was the arrangement. So let me make sure you are following the logic here, because it is as clear as it gets. Cathy Engelbert was willing to do media. She was willing to sit in front of a microphone. She was willing to answer questions. She just was not willing to answer the questions that actually matter. She was not willing to face Dan Patrick, who has been doing this for over 20 years, who has interviewed the commissioner of Major League Baseball, who has interviewed the commissioner of the NBA, commissioners who know they are walking into hard questions and show up anyway because that is what serious leadership looks like. She chose the soft room. She chose the controlled environment. She chose the interview where nobody was going to bring up Caitlyn Clark. Nobody was going to ask about the assault. Nobody was going to ask about the Congress situation. Nobody was going to ask about the pattern of behavior that has been unfolding inside the WNBA for months. She chose comfort over accountability, and in doing so, she told the entire sports world exactly what she is afraid of. And what she is afraid of is the truth. The truth about what has been happening to Caitlyn Clark inside this league. The truth about the targeting. The truth about the silence from the commissioner's office every single time something egregious happens on the court. The truth about a league that is experiencing the most significant moment of mainstream attention in its history and is responding to that moment by circling the wagons and hiding from every microphone that might ask a real question. This is the conversation that TV refuses to have. This is the part of the story the press release skipped, and we are not skipping it.
Well, at some point, you have to do this. I mean, if you want to be treated as a serious league, then do these.
Now let us talk about the pattern. Because this is not an isolated incident. This is not Cathy Engelbert having one bad day, one scheduling nightmare, one moment of poor judgment that she will learn from and correct. This is a pattern of behavior that has been building and building and building, and the Dan Patrick no-show is simply the moment it became impossible to ignore. Think about what Dan Patrick himself described when he went back to the day the Caitlyn Clark incident happened. The assault, the targeting, whatever you want to call it. The moment that sent shockwaves through the sports world and beyond. His show reached out to the WNBA all morning long. All morning. They were trying to get a comment. Just a comment. Does anybody have anything to say? Is anybody there at the office? Can the WNBA have their say, get out in front of this, give their voice to the story? And the answer was silence. Complete, absolute, soul-crushing silence from the office of the commissioner. They could not get a hold of anybody. The league office went dark on the day it needed to be loudest. On the day that the entire sports media apparatus was focused on what happened to Caitlyn Clark, the office that is supposed to protect the players, supposed to protect the integrity of the game, supposed to set the standard for accountability, that office went silent. And that is not an accident. That silence is a choice. Every single time Cathy Engelbert has had the opportunity to stand up and say something definitive about the protection of Caitlyn Clark, or any player for that matter, and has instead chosen to say nothing. That is a deliberate decision, a calculated retreat, an organizational posture of avoidance that starts at the very top and filters down through every level of the league's operations. You want to know why the culture inside the WNBA looks the way it looks? You want to know why players feel emboldened to act the way some of them have acted toward Caitlyn Clark? Look at the top. Look at the example being set by the woman who runs the whole operation. When the commissioner ducks accountability, when the commissioner hides from tough questions, when the commissioner sends a PR flack to cancel a scheduled interview rather than picking up the phone and having a direct, honest, adult conversation, that is the culture she is modeling. That is the standard she is setting, and it trickles down. Leadership, or the catastrophic, baffling absence of it. Let me walk you through the second layer of this, because it gets worse. It genuinely gets worse. And I want you to understand why the Kansas City radio situation is not a footnote. It is the centerpiece of the entire indictment. When Dan Patrick compared Engelbert's behavior to how other commissioners handle the same situation, the comparison was devastating. He has had the commissioner of Major League Baseball on his show. He has had the commissioner of the NBA on his show. And he made the point clearly. Those commissioners know they are walking into tough questions. They know it. They prepare for it. They sit down anyway. Because that is what it means to lead a serious professional sports organization. That is the standard that every other commissioner in American professional sports has accepted as part of the job. Cathy Engelbert is 50 yards away, 50 yards physically present at the same event, and she cannot walk over and do the interview she agreed to. She is right there, and she still sends a PR rep with a message that says she is not allowed to do this. I want every single person watching this video to let that image sit in their mind. The commissioner of the WNBA, physically present at the same venue, 50 yards from the interview setup, choosing to hide rather than walk across the room and answer questions about her own league. That is not a scheduling conflict. That is not a busy calendar. That is fear. Pure, undeniable, glaring fear of the questions that Dan Patrick was going to ask. And the questions themselves were not unreasonable. They were not a trap. Dan Patrick said it directly. He was not trying to ambush her. He was not trying to destroy her. He wanted to give her the opportunity to address the things that people genuinely want answers on. The Caitlyn Clark situation, the expansion, the Congress attention, the league's direction. These are the conversations that a commissioner should be eager to have, especially when the league is in the spotlight the way the WNBA is right now. This was a gift. This was an open door. And Cathy Engelbert slammed it shut and sent her PR team to clean up the mess. Now here is the second receipt. Because Dan Patrick did not just describe the no-show. He described the moment he realized what was actually happening. The moment the explanation arrived and made everything worse. Listen to this, and that says a lot about what is going on with the WNBA. Dan Patrick's words. Not mine, not a rival's, not a disgruntled former player. Dan Patrick, who has covered sports for over 20 years, who wanted to give the commissioner a fair platform, who promoted the interview all day, who waited almost 2 hours. That man looked at what happened and said it tells you a lot about what is going on with the WNBA. When a journalist of that caliber, with that track record, with that level of fairness and professionalism, walks away from an experience and says that you have to take it seriously, you have to sit with what that means. Because what it means is this. The WNBA, under Cathy Engelbert's leadership, has developed a culture of media avoidance that is now so deeply embedded, so thoroughly normalized, that the commissioner herself cannot override her own PR department's decision, even when she has already made a personal commitment to appear somewhere. She said yes, she made the promise, and then the institution swallowed the promise whole and replaced it with silence. That is not a communications problem. That is a leadership crisis. Let me now tell you what this costs Caitlyn Clark specifically. Because through all of this, through all the ducking and the hiding and the PR management and the Kansas City radio appearances where nobody asks anything difficult, there is a real human being on the other side of this story who is absorbing the consequences of Cathy Engelbert's cowardice. Caitlyn Clark came into this league and immediately became the most watched, most discussed, most consequential rookie in the history of women's basketball. She brought eyeballs, she brought sponsors, she brought a mainstream audience that the WNBA has been trying to attract for 27 years. And what did she get in return from the league office? Silence. Absolute, agonizing silence every time something happened to her that demanded a response from the top. When the incidents occurred, when the targeting happened, when the behavior on the court crossed lines that should have triggered an immediate, forceful, public response from the commissioner's office. What did Cathy Engelbert do? What did the league office say? The Dan Patrick Show described reaching out to the WNBA all morning on the day of the incident and being unable to get a single comment from anyone in that building. Nobody picked up, nobody called back, nobody came to the microphone. And now, when the most prominent sports talk show host in the country offers the commissioner a direct, fair, promoted platform to address all of it, to finally say something, to finally stand up and put the league's position on record, she ducks it. She sends a PR message. She goes to Kansas City and talks about expansion instead. Caitlyn Clark deserves better than this. She deserves a commissioner who stands at the podium and says, "This will not be tolerated. These are the consequences, and here is how we protect every player in this league going forward." Instead, she has a commissioner who cannot walk 50 yards across a room to do an interview she already agreed to. That is the cost. That is the real, undeniable, brutal cost of this leadership failure. And it is Caitlyn Clark who pays it, every single day that Cathy Engelbert refuses to be accountable. Now let us talk about what comes next. Because this story is not over, and the trajectory here is not going in a good direction for Cathy Engelbert or for the WNBA's front office. The first prediction I am going to make is this. The pressure on Engelbert is not going to decrease. It is going to increase, dramatically. When you have members of Congress paying attention to what is happening inside the WNBA, and that is what the transcript of this situation makes clear. The Congress angle is real and it is present. You are no longer dealing with a sports media story. You are dealing with a political story. You are dealing with a story that has the attention of people who have subpoena power, people who can call hearings, people who can put a commissioner under oath and ask questions that the PR department cannot cancel. The Dan Patrick no-show is embarrassing. Congressional scrutiny is catastrophic. And every time Cathy Engelbert chooses avoidance over accountability, she is making the second scenario more likely, not less. The second prediction: the players who have been watching this unfold are going to continue operating in an environment where the standard from the top is inconsistency and evasion. When the commissioner models avoidance, the players learn avoidance. When the commissioner refuses to be held accountable, the players feel no accountability either. The culture of the WNBA, the parts of it that have been ugly and embarrassing and genuinely harmful to the league's reputation, that culture does not exist in a vacuum. It exists because leadership has allowed it to exist. Leadership has modeled it. The third prediction: the media, which has been relatively patient with Engelbert and the WNBA front office, is running out of patience. Dan Patrick is not a small voice. He is not a fringe commentator with a niche audience. He has been doing this for over 20 years. He has relationships with every commissioner in American professional sports. When he goes on air and describes being stood up by the WNBA commissioner, when he says that it says a lot about what is going on with the league, that is a signal. That is the mainstream sports media beginning to turn. And once that turn happens, it does not reverse easily. And the final prediction, the one that matters most: Caitlyn Clark is going to keep being Caitlyn Clark. She is going to keep playing. She is going to keep drawing the audiences. She is going to keep being the story that everyone wants to talk about. And every single week that she continues to perform at the level she performs at, the contrast between her excellence and the commissioner's cowardice is going to become more glaring, more undeniable, more mathematically impossible to ignore. The league needs her more than she needs the league. And Cathy Engelbert, hiding behind a PR department and a Kansas City radio station, is proving that she knows it and is terrified by it. Here is the clip that nobody in mainstream television is going to play for you, because of what it reveals about the mindset of the people running this league. This is Dan Patrick, on air, describing exactly what kind of leader Cathy Engelbert has proven herself to be, in his own words, with no filter, no spin, and no diplomatic softening. If you want to be treated as a serious league, then do these things. That is what Dan Patrick said. That is the verdict from a man who has covered serious leagues for over 20 years. If you want to be treated as a serious league, then act like one. Show up for the interviews. Answer the hard questions. Put your commissioner in front of the microphone and let her defend the decisions her office has made. Because right now, today, in this moment, the WNBA is not acting like a serious league. It is acting like an organization that is afraid of its own reflection. It is acting like a front office that knows, deep down, that if the right questions get asked in the right forum by the right journalist, the answers are going to be devastating. And so the strategy is to make sure those questions never get asked. Cancel the interview, send the PR message, go to Kansas City and talk about expansion instead. But here is the thing about that strategy. It does not work. It has never worked. Every time a leader chooses avoidance over accountability, the story gets bigger, not smaller. Every time a commissioner hides from a microphone, the questions get louder, not quieter. Every time the WNBA's front office goes dark on a day when it should be speaking, the way it went dark on the day of the Caitlyn Clark incident, the narrative writes itself, and it is not the narrative that serves the league. Cathy Engelbert has had every opportunity to get out in front of this. She has had every opportunity to sit down, face the questions, and demonstrate that she is the kind of leader this league needs her to be in this extraordinary moment. She has chosen, repeatedly and deliberately, not to take those opportunities. And the cost of that choice is being paid by the players, by the fans, by the people who genuinely love this league and want to see it succeed, and most of all by Caitlyn Clark, who came into the WNBA and did everything right and deserved to be protected by the office that was supposed to protect her. Caitlyn Clark is out there right now, on the court, doing the work, being the story, carrying the weight of an entire league's mainstream breakthrough on her shoulders. And the commissioner of that league is 50 yards away, getting her bunker shots in, while a scheduled interview sits empty and the sports world watches in disbelief. That is the brutal, undeniable reality of what is happening inside the WNBA's front office. That is the story the press release will never tell you. And that is the story that is not going away, no matter how many Kansas City radio stations Cathy Engelbert calls instead. Here is the forced choice I am leaving you with today, and I want you to answer it in the comments right now. Do you believe that Cathy Engelbert's refusal to face tough questions is going to cost her the commissioner's job? Yes or no? Because the pressure is building from every direction. The media is turning, Congress is watching, the fans are furious, and the most important player in the history of women's basketball is out there performing at an elite level while the person who is supposed to be her shield is hiding from a microphone 50 yards away. Drop your answer below. Tell me what you think happens next. Tell me whether you believe Cathy Engelbert survives this moment, or whether the accountability that she has been running from finally catches up to her. This is Rim Run. If this video told you something that the mainstream conversation is burying, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell, because we are going to be here every single time the establishment tries to hide the truth about what is happening to Caitlyn Clark and the league she is trying to save.